Riley Evans had always prided herself on being the kind of woman who could wrestle chaos into neat corners. Deadlines met, apartment spotless, feelings filed away like receipts she might never need. But for the past 3 weeks, order had deserted her. A low-grade electricity hummed beneath her skin, hot and insistent, as if every nerve ending had woken from a long winter and now demanded spring. The tingling began as a harmless flutter during morning meetings, then bloomed into an ache whenever Boston's damp April breeze skimmed her calves on the walk home. Showers, scalding then ice-cold, only teased her body further. Deep breathing apps offered no relief. By the 19th day, she could barely string together an email without her mind drifting to a fantasy of anonymous fingers, easing the tension that coiled in her belly like a living thing. On a rain-slick Friday, Riley surrendered. She called Riverside Medical, stammered something about persistent discomfort, and requested a female physician. When the receptionist offered Dr. Eleanor Hart, Riley agreed, unaware the name alone would soon taste like smoke and honey on her tongue. She spent the weekend oscillating between anticipation and dread, washing sheets at 2 a.m., pacing hardwood floors in mismatched socks, convincing herself none of this was serious while secretly praying it was. Tuesday afternoon arrived gray and unremarkable. Perfect weather for blending in. Riley wore loose jeans, a thrift store Bruins hoodie, and not a hint of makeup. She hoped invisibility might blunt her humiliation. Instead, the moment the exam room door opened, humiliation burst into a wildfire of something hotter, sharper. Eleanor Hart stepped inside with the calm precision of a seasoned surgeon. Tall, shoulders straight, raven hair twisted into a low knot that exposed the elegant line of her neck. A white coat skimmed her hips, revealing long legs encased in charcoal trousers. Her eyes, storm cloud gray, seemed to catalog every detail of Riley in a single sweep. "Ms. Evans." That voice. A calm alto. Firm enough to anchor a panicked patient, soft enough to promise no judgment. Riley's pulse stumbled. She managed a nod and perched on the exam bench. Cold paper crinkled beneath her. Heat flushed her cheeks. Dr. Hart logged into the computer, fingers gliding across keys with pianist grace. When she finally turned, Riley felt seen in a way that left her breathless and raw. "What brings you in today?" Words tangled on Riley's tongue. "Say it clinically. Keep it safe." "I've been overly sensitive. Physically. Constant tension." Eleanor nodded as if patients confessed such things daily. "Any pain?" "Not exactly." Riley swallowed. "More like pressure. Arousal." The doctor clarified, clinical, not cold. The syllables landed between them like a match struck in darkness. "Yes," Riley whispered, the word tasting illicit. "Almost constant." Dr. Hart asked about sleep patterns, diet, stress, relationships. Riley offered clipped answers, hoping brevity might disguise the truth pulsing beneath. Then came the gentle exam. Fingertips at Riley's throat, measuring pulse. Cool stethoscope pressed to her chest, then lower against trembling ribs. Every contact sent sparks skittering beneath Riley's skin. She bit her lower lip so hard she tasted copper. When it ended, Eleanor stepped back, expression unreadable. "Physically, you appear healthy. This could be a complex feedback loop. Stress, hormonal fluctuation, maybe emotional factors. I'd like to see you again next week to explore it together." Her gaze held Riley's for a beat too long. "You're not alone in this." Outside, drizzle kissed Riley's cheeks, but the air felt fever warm. She wrapped her arms around herself, half wishing the raw March wind would slice through the heat Eleanor Hart had ignited. Yet beneath the mortification was a second, more unsettling feeling: hope. For the first time in 19 torturous days, someone had looked at her humming body and hadn't called it broken. That night Riley dreamed in fragments. Eleanor's steady hands, the low cadences of her voice, gray eyes holding secrets Riley suddenly longed to learn. She woke tangled in sheets damp with sweat and something tenderer, anticipation. Days crawled until the follow-up. She arrived clutching a coffee she barely sipped, heart rioting. This time Dr. Hart skipped the physical and guided Riley to a pair of chairs facing each other, more equal than doctor-patient. She spoke of the body's somatic messages, the way unmet needs manifest as sensation. Riley confessed the aching strangeness felt both frightening and, she blushed, exhilarating. Eleanor listened without flinching. Eventually she spoke. When desire becomes distress, the first step is permission. Permission to feel without judgment. She opened a drawer, retrieved a discreet white pamphlet labeled The Rose, a small, high-quality stimulator. Many women find this helpful. Use it whenever tension peaks. Guilt only feeds the cycle. Riley accepted the pamphlet with shaking hands, as though Eleanor had pressed a live ember into her palms. That evening she ordered the device with same-day delivery. Hours later, in the hush of her apartment, she let the unfamiliar buzz meet that coiled hunger. Release crashed over her like a saltwater wave, sharp, cleansing. She fell asleep smiling for the first time in weeks. But relief bred clarity. The craving wasn't merely for touch. It was for Eleanor. Each session magnified the silent dialogue between them, the lingering eye contact, the split-second pauses before clinical words resumed their march. Riley caught herself dressing with subconscious intent. Loose sweaters on days she feared her desire might scream. Fitted jeans when she longed to feel the pull of fabric against tingling skin. On their fourth meeting, Eleanor asked, "Does the tension spike after our conversations?" Riley's heartbeat thundered. Lying felt impossible. "Yes," she breathed. "Because of you." The doctor's eyes flickered, there, then gone, like sunlight off chrome. "That's helpful," she murmured. "We're getting closer." That evening Riley closed her eyes, tracing Eleanor's name on her tongue as her body shuddered around a pulse of pleasure. Closer to what? She didn't know, only that the answer lived somewhere behind Eleanor Hart's storm-gray gaze. By the sixth appointment, restraint frayed. Riley arrived exhausted, knees weak from the constant push-pull of want and fear. Before Eleanor could ask a single question, Riley's confession tumbled out. "I can't keep pretending. I'm desperate. Not just for release, for you." Silence flowered between them, heavy, fragile. Eleanor's fingers flexed against her notebook. "You're not the first patient to form feelings," she said carefully. Riley leaned forward, voice raw. "This isn't a crush. I walk out of here starving." Eleanor closed her eyes, a heartbeat too, then opened them, gaze clear and devastating. "I feel it too." The admission detonated between them. "But while you're my patient, I won't cross that line." Riley's resolve crystallized. "Then this is my last session." Eleanor's breath hitched. She stood, walked to the door and, click, turned the lock. Riley's world tilted. The quiet storm that had brewed for weeks finally broke. The click of the lock echoed like thunder in Riley Evans's ears. A single decisive sound that sliced through weeks of restraint. Dr. Eleanor Hart leaned her back against the closed office door as if bracing for impact. Storm-gray eyes fixed on Riley with an intensity that stole the air from the room. For a heartbeat nothing moved. Two women suspended between caution and craving, until Eleanor spoke, voice low, trembling at the edges. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered. Riley stood, every nerve pinging. "Then tell me to leave." Silence answered, vast, charged, undeniable. Eleanor pushed away from the door, taking one careful step, then another, until only a breath of space separated them. The faint citrus of hospital soap mingled with Riley's vanilla shampoo. It felt suddenly impossible that they had ever been strangers. Eleanor raised a tentative hand, brushed the back of her fingers along Riley's cheek. Riley's skin flared hot beneath the feather-light touch, but she didn't flinch. She leaned in, surrendering to the contact she had craved since the day they met. Eleanor's thumb traced the curve of Riley's lower lip. "You drive me mad," she murmured, confession slipping out on a shaky breath. Riley captured the doctor's hand, lacing their fingers together, grounding them both. "You said permission was the first step," she reminded softly. "I'm giving us mine. Are you ready to give yours?" For the first time Riley saw Eleanor truly hesitate, not as a clinician calculating risk, but as a woman standing on the edge of something vast. Then resolve settled across Eleanor's features. She nodded, slender muscles in her throat tightening with emotion. The kiss that followed was slow and deliberate, an exploration rather than a conquest. Riley registered every detail. The satin warmth of Eleanor's lips, the cool slide of a stethoscope against Riley's shoulder as Eleanor's white coat parted, the gentle exhale that tremored between them before Eleanor deepened the kiss. Heat unfurled through Riley's veins, but she fought the urge to rush. They had crossed the line. Now they needed to honor it carefully, memorably. Hands roamed with growing confidence. Riley's fingers slipping beneath Eleanor's coat to feel the steady drum of her heartbeat, Eleanor's palm flattening at Riley's waist, drawing her closer until no space remained. The office's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too clinical for what bloomed in that room, but neither woman dared break the moment to switch them off. Instead they created their own dimness. Eyes half closed, breaths shallow, world narrowed to the taste of each other. When they finally parted, foreheads pressed together, Riley's voice shook with wonder. I'd imagined this 100 times, and it still doesn't compare. Eleanor's answering smile was soft, almost shy. Same. Her gaze flicked to the locked door, reality tugging at the edges of the dream. We can't stay here, she said, regret and excitement twined in equal measure. Not like this. Your place. Riley offered, boldness threading her words. Eleanor nodded. Meet me there in an hour. I need to. She glanced around the office. Abandoned chart, half-finished notes, the ghost of professionalism still lingering like antiseptic. Close loose ends. Riley pressed a parting kiss to Eleanor's knuckles, then slipped into the hallway. She walked past reception in a haze, pulse thundering, Eleanor's taste still on her lips. Outside, the late afternoon drizzle had thickened into steady rain, city lights bleeding into puddles that mirrored Riley's swirling emotions. Fear, exhilaration, hunger, hope. Back in her apartment, Riley scrambled through drawers for something that felt both casual and dangerous. Dark jeans, a moss-green cashmere sweater, perfume dabbed at her wrists. She checked her phone compulsively. No new messages, but she trusted Eleanor's word more than any notification ping. By the time a rideshare carried her across the river to Eleanor's neighborhood, row houses adorned with budding window boxes, night had settled, slick and shimmering. Eleanor opened the door before Riley could knock. She had changed into a simple black t-shirt and loose linen pants, hair unpinned and tumbling over her shoulders. Without a word she guided Riley inside, locking the door behind them with deliberate finality. The apartment smelled of jasmine and rain-cooled bricks. Warm lamplight revealed shelves stacked with medical journals beside dog-eared poetry collections, evidence of a mind both analytical and romantic. They gravitated to the living room sofa, knees brushing. For a moment neither spoke. The air between them pulsed with anticipation. Then Eleanor reached out, tracing the length of Riley's forearm, goose bumps erupting beneath her touch. Tell me what you need, she said, voice husky. Everything you're willing to give. Eleanor's answering kiss was fiercer than the first. Months of withheld longing unfurling all at once. They shed layers in a slow unraveling, garments pooling like shadows on the hardwood. Each touch felt like a promise sealed in the space where skin met skin. Eleanor's hands were steady, purposeful, yet reverent, as though mapping sacred ground. Riley responded in kind, sliding fingertips along Eleanor's spine, coaxing shivers that mirrored her own. They navigated their bodies with a tender urgency. No rushed fumbling, only exploration, murmured questions, gasped answers. When release came, it was less a detonation than a great unfolding. Riley's spine arching, Eleanor's name a mantra on her lips, Eleanor trembling in Riley's arms moments later. In the aftermath they lay tangled beneath a light cotton throw, breathing syncopated, rain drumming a lullaby against the windows. Riley traced idle patterns on Eleanor's collarbone. Does this scare you? She asked gently. Eleanor's eyelids fluttered open, gaze clear despite the lingering haze of pleasure. Terrifies me, she admitted. I've built my life on boundaries, on rules that protect people. And yet, her hand found Riley's, twining their fingers. With you, breaking the rule feels like the only honest thing I've done in years. An hour later, hunger tugged again. Less frantic now, more like a tide returning as promised. They moved to the kitchen, barefoot, sharing leftover soup straight from the pot, laughing when Riley dribbled broth on Eleanor's shirt. It felt breathtakingly ordinary for something so extraordinary. Near midnight, Riley rose to leave, worry clouding her features. "Should we slow down?" Eleanor walked her to the door, pressing a kiss to Riley's brow. "I don't want to," she whispered. Then, more firmly, "But I need to figure out how to navigate this, ethically, professionally. Let me think." Riley nodded, unwilling but understanding. As she stepped into the hallway, Eleanor caught her wrist, slipped a key into Riley's palm. "For whenever thinking turns into knowing," she said. Rain eased during Riley's ride home, leaving streets glistening, cleansed. She crawled into bed, Eleanor's key tucked beneath her pillow like a secret vow. For the first time in months, the ache inside her wasn't born of lack. It was the sweet soreness of being met, answered, seen. Over the following weeks, a delicate routine emerged. Their days remained separate. Eleanor respecting a temporary leave from her practice, Riley diving into work, but nights were theirs. Some evenings they met for late dinners in quiet Beacon Hill bistros, fingertips brushing under linen tablecloths. Other nights they hardly made it past Eleanor's threshold before lips collided and coats fell to the floor. Yet real life refused to stay outside the bedroom door. Gossip rippled through Riverside Medical when Eleanor requested an extended sabbatical. Riley's boss noted her newfound glow with teasing curiosity. And beneath each stolen moment lay questions neither woman had fully voiced. What happens when Eleanor's leave ends? How will they face a world that rarely forgives boundary crossings, even when love is the catalyst? One Friday dusk, returning from the grocery store, Riley found Eleanor on her building's stoop, cardigan wrapped tight against the chill. Her eyes were shadowed with sleeplessness. "I've drafted my resignation," Eleanor said without preamble. Riley's breath caught. "Are you sure?" Eleanor nodded, pressing folded papers into Riley's hand like a fragile bird. "I can't be your doctor again. I want to be everything else instead." Emotion swelled in Riley's throat, relief, awe, a flicker of fear. She led Eleanor upstairs, groceries forgotten. On the living room floor they read resignation clauses between kisses, tears silvering their smiles. Eleanor was taking a leap from certainty into chaos, and Riley knew the least she could do was jump with her. As dawn broke, painting Boston's skyline rose gold, Eleanor slept curled against Riley's side. Riley watched the city wake beyond the window and realized her own life had cracked open. Messy, perilous, impossibly bright. She didn't know the shape of their future, only that it would be written together, line by trembling line. Riley Evans woke on a Saturday clouded by the scent of strong coffee and damp spring air seeping through cracked windows. Eleanor Hart moved quietly in the kitchen, bare feet on hardwood, sleeves of Riley's gray sweatshirt pushed to her elbows as she whisked eggs in a ceramic bowl. The domestic normalcy felt surreal, fragile, almost stolen. Riley slipped from bed, wrapped her arms around Eleanor's waist, and pressed her cheek between Eleanor's shoulder blades, drawing warmth and courage in equal measure. The resignation letter had been emailed to Riverside Medical the night before, time-stamped 2:13 a.m. Now, in the hush before anyone else knew, they clung to the illusion that love could exist in a vacuum. But reality announced itself at 9:07 a.m. when Eleanor's phone chimed. An email from the hospital's chief of medicine requesting an urgent meeting. A second notification followed minutes later. Her department head calling. Eleanor silenced the phone, but dread pooled behind her ribs. They ate breakfast with forced calm. Halfway through buttering toast, Riley blurted, "We can handle whatever comes. Together." Eleanor managed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've always been the rule keeper, Ry. Breaking them is easy. Living with the fallout is harder." That afternoon Eleanor met the hospital board's panel in a sterile conference room washed in fluorescent glare. Riley paced their apartment, phone in hand, rehearsing supportive words. Hours crawled. At dusk Eleanor returned, shoulders tense, jaw set. "They've accepted my resignation," she said, voice paper-thin. "Effective immediately. But there'll be a review, possible sanctions with the licensing board." She sank onto the couch as if her bones had turned to glass. Riley knelt, cupped Eleanor's face. "We'll fight whatever we have to. You're more than a title on a door." Tears that had waited politely all day slipped free. Riley brushed them away with lips and fingers. The next weeks blurred into a rhythm of uncertainty and fierce tenderness. Eleanor navigated legal consultations and ethics committee forms by day. Riley became a fortress of logistics, printing documents, scheduling appointments, brewing late-night tea sweetened with honey and whispered reassurance. Nights they collapsed into each other, finding in shared skin the only certainty they trusted. One Tuesday morning, Riley's work inbox pinged with a message titled Media Inquiry. Dr. Hart, a local health blog, had sniffed rumors of Eleanor's abrupt departure and wanted comment. Riley's heart lurched. Word was spreading faster than they'd hoped. She forwarded the email to Eleanor, who sighed, deleting it without reply. But the breach rattled them both. That night, while Boston rain rattled window panes, Riley found Eleanor seated at the kitchen table, CV open on her laptop but untouched. "What if I've ruined everything I built?" Eleanor whispered. "You haven't," Riley insisted, sliding onto her lap despite Eleanor's protest. "You sacrificed a job, not your skill, not your integrity." Riley kissed her, slow and sure, until Eleanor's hands unclenched. "We'll redesign your future," Riley murmured. "Maybe private telehealth, maybe research, maybe something new entirely. I'll help." For the first time in days, Eleanor exhaled without shuddering. But redesigning a life costs money. Hospital severance would cover 3 months. Beyond that, uncertainty loomed. Riley, already juggling deadlines at her marketing firm, picked up freelance projects, burning midnight oil while Eleanor drafted grant proposals for a non-profit women's health startup. They worked at opposite ends of the dining table, trading silent encouragement, refilling coffee mugs, massaging stiff shoulders, occasionally meeting in the hallway for a kiss that tasted like gritty determination. Pressure mounted when the state licensing board scheduled Eleanor's ethics hearing. One misjudged question could strip her of the right to practice for years. On hearing day, Riley waited outside the mahogany-paneled chamber, knuckles white around a paper cup of vending machine coffee. Eleanor emerged after 2 tense hours, eyes red-rimmed but shining. "Probationary period, supervision required, no suspension," she said, voice cracking with relief. Riley hooped, uncaring of the startled receptionist, and pulled Eleanor into a fierce embrace. That night they celebrated on their rooftop, cheap champagne fizzing in mismatched mugs, skyline glittering like scattered sequins. Eleanor rested her head on Riley's shoulder. "I didn't lose my license, but I did lose who I thought I was." Riley kissed the crown of her head. "Maybe that's space for who you're becoming." Their joy was tempered, however, by an unexpected confession. Eleanor's savings were almost gone. Her parents, retired schoolteachers in Vermont, had offered a loan she refused to consider. Pride knotted in her throat. Riley proposed they share her apartment permanently, splitting rent. Eleanor hesitated only a moment before nodding, eyes shimmering with gratitude and something deeper. Acceptance that vulnerability, once taboo, was now their common language. Moving day arrived with cardboard boxes and tangled lamp cords. As they disassembled Eleanor's old life, Riley stumbled upon a shoebox crammed with postcards. Paris, Kyoto, Santorini, each scrawled with Eleanor's tiny handwriting. "I send myself a postcard any time I travel alone," Eleanor explained, cheeks pink. "Proof that I witnessed something beautiful." Riley pressed the box to her chest. "Let's keep filling it. Together." Settling into shared space brought new rhythms. Saturday farmers markets, blueberry pancake Sundays, and late-night dance parties to 90s playlists while folding laundry. Yet shadows remained. Sometimes Eleanor woke gasping from dreams where hallways stretched endless and she could never find Riley. On those nights, Riley whispered steady assurances until tremor stilled. Conversely, Riley battled imposter syndrome as she shouldered extra freelance load. Eleanor countered by tucking encouraging notes into Riley's laptop case. "You make chaos art, or your words changed my world." Spring tipped into humid Boston summer. One sticky July evening, Eleanor invited Riley to the River Esplanade for fireworks. Sprawled on a plaid blanket, fireflies flickering like stray sparks, they watched bursts of color paint the sky. Eleanor threaded her fingers through Riley's. "I spent years dissecting hearts with ultrasound, but I never listened to my own." "You did." Riley rested her head on Eleanor's shoulder, murmuring, "You healed mine first." Back home, sweat-slick and drowsy, they peeled off clothes and slipped into a cool shower, water sluicing heat and city dust away. Beneath the stream, Eleanor cupped Riley's face. "I love you," she said, words finally escaping. Riley smiled, tears mingling with drops. "I was already yours the moment you said, 'You're not alone.'" The next morning brought an email from the women's health startup. Funding approved, position offered. Director of Patient Advocacy and Outreach. Eleanor gasped, reading aloud in a voice that trembled between disbelief and joy. The entry salary was modest compared to her old attending physician pay, but the mission felt expansive. Telehealth for underserved communities, education on stigma-free sexuality, research on female arousal disorders, the very wound that first led Riley to Eleanor's door. They danced barefoot in the kitchen, sunlight carving gold ribbons across their intertwined shadows. When the music faded, they shared a look that said, "Look how far we've come, and how much further we'll go." But joy rarely arrives unaccompanied. That evening, Riley's boss announced impending layoffs. The marketing firm had lost its largest client. Riley's position teetered on the chopping block. She hid the worry behind a brave grin, but Eleanor saw through it. They spent the night budgeting on a legal pad, crossing out luxuries, adding freelance goals, equal partners in risk and resilience. As August humidity peaked, a final obstacle lurked: the ethics board's 6-month probation review. A single negative patient feedback report could derail Eleanor's new job offer. Determined to prove her dedication, Eleanor volunteered weekends at a free clinic, logging supervised hours with humility and fervor that inspired the entire staff. Meanwhile, Riley hustled gigs, writing ad copy for eco-startups, polishing grant proposals for art nonprofits, pushing past exhaustion because the life they were building depended on it. The night before the review, they sat on the fire escape, legs dangling over the alley. Cicadas buzzed. Distant traffic hummed like white noise. Riley slipped a hand into her pocket and produced one of Eleanor's old postcards, the blank Santorini card Riley had secretly swiped weeks earlier. On it she'd written, "We watched fireworks over Boston Harbor, and the sparks reflected in your eyes told me I was finally home." She offered Eleanor a pen. "Your turn. Date it. Sign it. We witnessed something beautiful, together." Tears glimmered in Eleanor's lashes as she wrote, "August 14th, the night before we begin again." She tucked the card into the box on her lap. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she whispered, "this is already everything." Riley drew her into a kiss sweet with summer air and promise. Beneath them, city lights shimmered like liquid gold, unaware of the two women poised above, bruised by consequence yet buoyed by love, ready to face dawn's verdict hand in hand. August sunlight poured through the hearing room windows like conviction itself, illuminating every polished surface and anxious heartbeat. Riley Evans sat in the back row, hands folded so tightly her knuckles blanched, while Dr. Eleanor Hart faced the Massachusetts Board of Medicine for her probation review. A semicircle of stern faces questioned Eleanor on patient safety, boundaries, and professional growth. Eleanor met each inquiry with steady honesty, acknowledging mistakes without excuses, citing volunteer hours at the free clinic, presenting letters from mentors who praised her empathy and reform. At one point, a board member asked, "Why should we trust you will never repeat this lapse?" Eleanor inhaled, then spoke words rehearsed only in her heart. "Because I've learned that safeguarding a patient's dignity is impossible if I ignore my own humanity. Accountability isn't the end of compassion. It's the beginning." 2 tense hours later, the board called a recess to deliberate. Eleanor joined Riley in the corridor, shoulders rigid, eyes reflecting fluorescent glare and raw hope. They didn't speak. They simply linked fingers. 10 minutes felt like 10 centuries before the panel reconvened and delivered its verdict. Probation lifted, license fully reinstated, record marked, remediated. Eleanor's knees nearly buckled. Riley's relieved laugh dissolved into tears neither tried to hide. Days blurred into a brilliant rush. The women's health startup announced its official launch date, appointing Eleanor Director of Patient Advocacy. Her probation experience transformed into driving force for ethical reform. Meanwhile, Riley survived her company's layoffs by pitching a bold campaign that saved 2 smaller clients. Her boss promoted her to senior content strategist. Their apartment, once a cramped sanctuary of crisis, turned into a headquarters of ambition. Whiteboards peppered with launch timelines, sticky notes on the fridge tracking freelance invoices, and a slowly filling jar labeled Santorini Fund. Yet success carried fresh strain. Evening meetings, business trip flights, deadlines deep into dawn left them passing like ships. Eleanor tiptoeing in from late-night Zoom calls with European donors while Riley rose at 5 a.m. to craft pitches for ecotech startups. Intimacy shrank to sleepy forehead kisses and handwritten notes. Drink water, my love. Break at 3 p.m., stretch. The very futures they fought for now threatened the closeness that ignited them. One rain-soaked Thursday, Riley arrived home early to find Eleanor asleep at the dining table, laptop still glowing against her cheek, glasses askew. Fatigue etched shadows beneath her eyes. Riley's chest tightened with guilt. She'd skipped 3 dinners this week preparing a conference talk in Chicago. Carefully she closed the laptop and brushed stray hair from Eleanor's face. Eleanor stirred, blinking. "Time is eating us," she whispered hoarsely. Riley crouched beside her. "We can't let wins cost us what matters most." She pulled a folded travel brochure from her tote. Acadia National Park, cabins by the sea. "I was waiting for the right moment. Let's disappear for a week. No Wi-Fi, no decks, no hearings. Just us, salt air and star-heavy silence." Eleanor's lips curved, exhaustion giving way to longing. "Can we afford downtime?" "We can't afford not to," Riley said, voice firm. They left at dawn 2 days later, trading Boston's honking arteries for Maine's pine-lined roads. Riley drove, windows down, radio humming 90s soft rock while Eleanor sang off-key between bites of blueberry muffins. At the cabin, the ocean greeted them with briny wind that whipped worries clean. They stoked a wood-burning stove, brewed coffee that tasted of smoke and new beginnings, and spent long hours exploring tide pools, narrating each discovery like children. On their 3rd evening, they hiked a cliff trail to watch sunset bleed into the Atlantic. Perched on weathered granite, Riley produced 2 postcards from her backpack, blank except for a date in the corner. "Pick a memory," she said. Eleanor wrote first. "August 24th. Screamed into the crashing surf and felt it carry my fears away." Riley penned. "August 24th. Counted freckles on the woman who saved my life. Lost track at 36. Decided to keep counting forever." They sealed the cards in a plastic pouch, tucked them into a crevice in the rock, a private lighthouse to guide them back should life ever drift too far. That night, wrapped in quilts beneath a sky unpolluted by city glare, Eleanor traced constellations on Riley's skin. "When I think of the exam room where we met, it feels like another lifetime," she whispered. Riley smiled, fingers combing Eleanor's hair. "Maybe we needed to break rules to rebuild better ones." Their lovemaking was slow, unhurried, the kind born not of urgency but of deep recognition. Pleasure rolled through them in warm waves, leaving afterglow and laughter tangled in cotton sheets. Back in Boston, autumn arrived crisp and copper-leafed. Eleanor thrived at the startup, launching telehealth workshops on desire disorders, lobbying insurers to cover female arousal devices, mentoring interns who admired her candor. Riley's storytelling prowess landed her on a creative directors panel at HubSpot's Inbound conference. Between hectic days, they carved nightly rituals. 20-minute orbit time, where laptops closed, phones silenced, Bodies stretched on the living room rug, simply breathing together until hearts synced. Challenges persisted. Grant deadlines, a burst pipe that flooded their kitchen. Headlines resurfacing Eleanor's past misstep. But each hurdle met the strength of two women who had already survived public scrutiny and private doubt. They celebrated small victories. Eleanor's first published op-ed, Riley's viral sustainability campaign, an adopted rescue cat named Fig who decided cardboard boxes were superior to cat beds. Late November brought the one-year anniversary of Riley's fateful appointment. They marked the date with dinner at the same riverside bistro where they'd once hidden furtive touches beneath linen cloths. This time they sat by the window, openly holding hands, candlelight reflecting in their eyes. Eleanor raised a glass of Cabernet. "To accidents that feel like destiny," she toasted. Riley clinked her glass. "To giving ourselves permission," she added. Outside, snowflakes drifted over the Charles River, each one singular and fleeting yet part of a larger, shimmering whole, much like their journey. They strolled home through swirling white, breath puffing like secret vows. At their door, Eleanor paused, dusting snow from Riley's hair. "I used to send postcards so I wouldn't forget my lone witness. Now every memory has two signatures." Riley pulled Eleanor close, keys forgotten between mittened fingers. "Good," she murmured against Eleanor's smile. "Because the story we're writing needs both our hands." And in the hush of first snow, beneath city lights that shimmered like far-off galaxies, they stepped inside, ready to face pages still blank, confident the ink of shared courage and unrepentant love would fill them, line after radiant line.